Over on Jaguar 7, a new baseball video is out. In this video, we talk about an autograph signing gone horribly wrong involving the New York Yankees in 1997. Click the card in the upper right corner to watch. And now, on with our feature presentation. What's the number one rule of broadcasting games when it comes to determining what game is aired by the station? The home team always wins out. It doesn't matter how good the other games are. It doesn't matter how bad the home team is, or whatever else is happening in the NFL. Unless there's a blackout, the station and the market of the home team has to show the game. If you live in Detroit, and there's a battle going on for the NFC East crown between the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles, but at the same time, the Lions are playing at home, and the Lions are mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, too bad, Detroit, you're getting the Lions game. It makes sense as to why that's the case, because traditionally speaking, people care more about their team than the happenings of the league as a whole. And you're typically going to get a lot more outrage if you don't show the local team versus if you don't show a team, no matter how good they are or how important their game might be, hundreds of miles away that doesn't have a huge fan base in the city in question. Well, I bring all that up because back in 1973, everyone was just winging it, and no one really knew the rules. Which takes us to the station that you've been watching this whole time, WDAF. Today, WDAF is the Fox affiliate of Kansas City, but back in 1973, Channel 4 was an NBC affiliate. And being an NBC affiliate, and seeing as NBC had the rights to the AFC package of games, you would think, and logically so, that WDAF would show all the games involving the home team, the Kansas City Chiefs. However, that's where you'd be wrong. Because to close off the 1973 season, even if you lived in Kansas City, you couldn't watch their final game of the season against the San Diego Chargers, even though the game was sold out. It's a bizarre story, and a bizarre situation that half a century later deserves a deep dive. Because this is the story behind one of the strangest broadcasting controversies of an already strange 1973 season. Before I talk about the decision that this NBC affiliate in question made, we need some context to understand the importance of the game at hand, as well as what the rules were around the NFL when it came to the televising of games. And the team in question is this one right here, the Kansas City Chiefs. In 1973, the goal for the Chiefs was simple: make it back to the playoffs and win their second division title in 3 years. However, as you can tell from these lowlights, it didn't quite work out that way. Through 10 weeks, the Chiefs were in a good position. They were 6-3-1, led the AFC West by a game, and were tied with the Cleveland Browns for a top 4 record in the AFC. So as long as they didn't completely collapse with 4 games left, they would be okay, whether it was as the division winner or as a wild card. And then for whatever reason, everything just completely fell apart. Following a 14-10 loss to the Denver Broncos, a 20-20 tie to the Cleveland Browns, and a 37-7 loss to the Oakland Raiders, the Chiefs, after a 3-game winless streak, went from 6-3-1 to 6-5-2. It was an ugly stretch that is still regarded today as one of the biggest chokes in franchise history. Against the Broncos, they mustered up just 103 net passing yards, with starting quarterback Mike Livingston going 12 for 31, completing just 38% of his passes with 2 interceptions, 5 sacks, and a passer rating of 35.6, which is worse than if he did nothing but spike the ball into the ground on every single play. Against the Browns, the Chiefs had a 20-6 lead late in the fourth quarter, and things were looking good. Then they allowed 2 touchdowns in the final 7 minutes from 50-plus yards out, put the ball on the ground 6 times, and choked away that win. And against the Raiders, the less said about that game the better. As in that one, the Chiefs had just 8 first downs, had 4 turnovers, had 24 rushing yards on 2 yards per carry, and had 106 total yards. That's it. Oakland outgained them 353 to 106 in yardage, more than tripling their output, and outgained them 259 to 24 in rushing yardage, or beating their output there by roughly 11 times. It was ugly with a capital U, and by the end of this abysmal 3-game stretch, where the Chiefs got outscored 71 to 41, the Chiefs not only found themselves in 3rd place in the AFC West, but found themselves mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. Talk about a giant fall from grace. And even though we wouldn't know it at the time, you could argue that this 3-game stretch was the turning point in franchise history that they would never be able to recover from for another decade, as this 3-game stretch signaled the end of the Chiefs' reign as one of the top teams in the AFC, and the beginning of the end for head coach Hank Stram. But that raises the question, if the Chiefs were no longer competing for the AFC West, then who was? Well, it was these 2 teams right here, the Oakland Raiders and the Denver Broncos. After 13 weeks, the Raiders found themselves atop the division with an 8-4-1 record, thanks in part to a suffocating defense that was the 2nd best in the AFC by allowing just 158 points, or roughly 12 points per game. And the Broncos found themselves right behind at 7-4-2, thanks to a dominant offense that was the best in the AFC by scoring 337 points, or roughly 26 points per game. And as if the race for the division crown wasn't exciting enough as it was, there was no mathematical way for both of these teams to make it into the playoffs, as the Pittsburgh Steelers were currently the leaders for the wild card at 9 wins. Only one of these 2 teams was going to be able to make it. And as if that wasn't exciting enough, guess what 2 teams were playing each other on the final day of the regular season in Week 14? You guessed it, the Denver Broncos and the Oakland Raiders. The game at the Oakland Coliseum was the AFC West title game. Winner goes to the playoffs, which, if it's in Oakland, is their 2nd straight division title, and if it's in Denver, is their 1st playoff appearance ever. And the loser goes home. Keep in mind that any possible head-to-head tiebreaker wouldn't even apply here, since the teams met earlier in the season on Monday Night Football, and they tied at 23 apiece. So this truly was one game for all the marbles. So you would think that this would be the marquee game for NBC. This game would feature your #1 broadcasting team with Kurt Gowdy on the call, and would be shown to the majority of the country. And you would be 100% right. However, even though NBC had the doubleheader, and even though this Broncos-Raiders game was the 4 o'clock game, not everyone would be able to watch it, since NFL television rules dictated that if the team in your home market is playing at home, you only get 1 game. This was done in an effort to prevent people from staying home and trying to watch 2 games instead of going to the home team's game and only getting 1. And in an effort to make people who want to watch 6 continuous hours of football watch both networks. So there was some logistical sense behind this. And because the Chiefs were playing at home for their final game of the season, which was this battle right here against the San Diego Chargers, you know what that means. No one in Kansas City is going to get Broncos Raiders. You get to watch the hometown Chiefs, who are mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, play the 2-10-1 San Diego Chargers, who are near the bottom of the NFL and inept in just about every way possible. And that's it. Now maybe Kansas City would get to watch Broncos Raiders if the Chiefs did not sell out their game, thereby putting the blackout rules in place and preventing the market from watching the Chiefs unless they were physically at Arrowhead. But all of the games for the Chiefs in 1973 sold out, so this wasn't applicable. Kansas City was getting the meaningless Chargers-Chiefs game featuring the local team over the AFC West title game between the Broncos and the Raiders. And if that's what ended up happening, then let's be honest, this is a non-story. That's how the rules are, and that's how they've always been. There's nothing controversial about showing the home team in the home market, even if they have nothing to play for, because that's the way it's been, and because there are tons of fans of the home team in the home market that only care about their team. However, in 1973, everyone was kind of just winging it. The blackout rules were created and changed just days before the season kicked off. Remember that prior to 1973, every home game, regardless of whether or not it was a sellout, got blacked out. Even if Arrowhead Stadium was sold out, if you wanted to watch the Chiefs play it prior to 1973, you had to physically leave Kansas City to do so, or mess with an antenna and get a signal somewhere else. It wasn't until Congress stepped in and banned blackouts of games that sold out that this policy changed. And I've talked about the blackout policy and some of the crazy stories that happened in the beginning when no one really knew what they were doing in previous videos on my channel before. So if you want to learn more about this, you can do so by clicking the card in the upper right corner. Because this is where it gets confusing and tricky. The rules said that you couldn't black out a game in the home market if it was sold out. However, at the time, with the way it was written, the rules said nothing about what the affiliate could do. If the affiliate in question wanted to show a different game, apparently, they were well within their rights to do so. Now, the rule was that the affiliate had to show the local team every time they were on the road, and that's the way it was even before 1973. But there was nothing, as it was written at the time, that said the affiliate had to show the local team when they were at home. And I think you can see where this one is going. Because for the final week of the 1973 season, the NBC affiliate in Kansas City, WDAF, decided not to show the game that you've been watching. Despite the fact that all the tickets were sold, even though it might not look like it because there were a ton of no-shows due to the weather and the meaningless nature of the game, WDAF thought that they would do better in the ratings and in serving the interests of the football fans in Kansas City by not showing the Chiefs play their final game of the season. Instead, WDAF decided to show the Broncos-Raiders game for the AFC West title, meaning that if you were in Kansas City, even though your team was at home, it was just like it was in 1972 and 1971 and every other year before that, where you couldn't watch your team play live on TV and had to resort to listening on the radio. When officials were asked about the decision, all they said was that it had to do with the importance of the Broncos-Raiders game, which essentially boils down to the fact that they would rather show a game with meaning versus a game with no meaning. And this truly was a bizarre scenario, because the way the blackout laws and television rules were written, it was always assumed that the affiliate, whenever possible, would love to show the local team. The team in Pittsburgh that most people care about is the Steelers, so you want to show the Steelers. The team in Chicago that most people care about is the Bears, so you want to show the Bears. And you get the idea. But this was really one of the first times where the affiliate in question said, wait a second, we don't really want to do that. People are sour on the Chiefs after this choke. They're playing the Chargers, who are terrible, and who got shut out by the Chiefs last time in an ugly game, and we've got an AFC West title game that we can show instead. We've got a de facto playoff game on our hands. We're going to show that. Truly a weird and wacky situation, but it wouldn't be the last time that, for one reason or another, even though the game wasn't blacked out, it wouldn't be shown locally. To learn more about a weird instance of this occurring in 1981 for a completely different reason, click the card in the upper right corner. As for how everything turned out, the Chiefs destroyed the Chargers 33-6 in a game that was never even the slightest bit competitive. To give you an idea of how uncompetitive it was, Chargers quarterback Wayne Clark went 4 for 13 with no touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and a passer rating of 0.6. You heard that right, 0.6. I don't even need to say anything else. The Chargers turned it over 6 times compared to none by the Chiefs, and it was an ugly end to an ugly season for San Diego, as well as a somewhat positive note for the Chiefs to end the year on, even though they never should have gotten themselves into this mess. So WDAF could have shown an elementary school recess football game, and it would have been more competitive. So from a gameplay perspective, they made the right call. However, the Broncos-Raiders game was a close one regardless for the division crown, as the Raiders won 21-17. If we're judging by what game turned out to be better, and what game a completely neutral football fan would have enjoyed more, then it's no question, WDAF made the right call. If we're judging by whether they actually made the right call though, and whether people in Kansas City were happy about this, well, that's a different story that can still be debated 50 years later. However, I don't know if it's because of shoddy journalism, or because of fan apathy, or because the fans completely understood. But usually with these stories, you hear something about the phone lines getting flooded and fans angrily calling the network. Here, I dug high and low, and I found absolutely nothing, so take that for what it's worth. During the national anthem of every Chiefs game, Chiefs fans yell that it's the home of the Chiefs. But to end the 1973 season, WDAF, even though it technically was the home of the Chiefs, wasn't really the home of the Chiefs. Get your official Jaguar Gator 9 merchandise by going to jj9shop.com, and be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out a lot. Join me every Wednesday night where we'll play NFL Trivia for cash prizes at 9 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. To learn more about the history of college football, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To learn more about the history of Major League Baseball, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 7. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.